Welcome to Tripping Over the Barrel, a series that highlights the unique personalities within the oil and gas industry and the stories they have to share, with your hosts and lead storytellers, Tilo and Dr. Funkenstein.
Tim, I told you I was going to ask you this question, so I'm just going to ask it. What is your favorite TV show of all time?
So I've got a little bit of recency bias here. I've been watching Friends reruns from the 90s, for the last several months, just kind of in rerun. And that's got to be probably my number one. If we got to go for a drama, modern, I really like Blue Bloods. I watch that quite a bit.
So there's a reason why I asked that question, but Friends. Okay. So Friends, shout out Brandeis University, my alma mater, Waltham, Massachusetts. It was actually based on a coffee shop where a bunch of Brandeis kids hung out, and then they moved to New York and created Friends. So it's loosely based on Brandeis, I think written by Brandeis people.
Wow.
That's
you don't get many Brandeis references. No, you don't.
No, not in oil and gas. You don't get many Brandeis people either. So, but this is why I wanted to ask. And Barry Barksdale, who's kind enough to join us from his villa in Nantucket, I'm going to ask you the same question. But the reason why I asked him is because my favorite show of all time is called The Wire. Have you guys seen The Wire?
I've seen one episode.
No.
And the reason I thought about this is because there's one of the main characters in The Wire. His name is Avon Barksdale. So as we were coming into this, I'm like, okay, there's a Barksdale tie. But one of my favorite lines in The Wire is from a guy named Omar. And Omar was basically his job was to rob drug dealers. Long story short, you need to have some context. It's a Baltimore Streets type show. And Omar, actually, one of his famous lines, which I think is applicable to today, is, if you come at the king, you best not miss. And Mr. Barksdale, you, sir, may be the king of data and data aggregation in oil and gas. How about that?
Wow. You should get out more often.
Probably should have warned him you were going to go at him with the king bit.
Well, but there he is, man. So,
you're
very you've had a couple minutes to think about it. What's your favorite TV show of all time?
Well, it's not going to be impressive. I mean, I can sit there and flip. I got the worst case OCD on the planet Earth. And so I flip around and I can sit there and watch episode after episode after episode of Seinfeld and Friends too. I mean, it's just stupid humor. I mean, it's nice, relaxed. Like I said, I don't watch TV. So, but I can sit and watch those for a long time.
Yeah, nice. I found those kind of shows, you have so little investment. You can just pick them up in the middle, at the end. You can just pick them up and just go with it. You don't need to invest in any backstory to just start watching it.
Man, I remember early 90s, my dad just cackling like a hyena out there watching Seinfeld. And of course, it became one of my favorite shows. So anyways, off of the TV topic and on to Mr. Barry Barksdale. Barry, you were highly recommended to come on this podcast from a big fan of the podcast and a recent guest, Kevin Decker, the man. And he said that you'd be able to provide great insight around what you've done with PDS, kind of what you do in the oil and gas industry. So if you could give us a little bit of your history, where did you grow up? How'd you get into the industry, and what is PDS?
I've been in Austin since I was 5 years old and never really considered anything other than going to UT. Went to UT, moved to Houston when I got out of school because my brother had gone down there and got an oil business and had done pretty well with it. And so I went and unfortunately, when I got out of school, geologists were commanding about the same as people swinging off the back of BFI trucks. And I landed in the Panhandle doing land work and pipeline right-of-way work. And so that was kind of my introduction and learning, which baptism by fire, that's where you get it. But and then went through a series of different things in the industry and found myself looking for a second nickel to rub with the one I had. And one of the things that was always a pain in the neck to do was find posted crude prices quickly. And so I was trading crude on the side and went to a guy I traded crude with at Exxon, another one at Amoco. And I knew just enough Visual Basic to be dangerous. And said, if I track all the posted crude prices and put them into a file every night, will you pay me? And they said, sure. And,
Nice.
like I said, I'd love to tell you that was some brilliant idea or something, but it turned out everybody in the industry had kind of an admin type dialing these 800 numbers to listen to recordings to get 1,100 different posted prices every day. And so I put them into a Lotus 123 spreadsheet and got up, listened to recordings in the morning. This is right after I moved to Austin, drove to Houston, made sales calls. And within about a year and a half, I priced it way too low, which some people say I still have a habit of doing that.
Heard that.
But, so it's, but we locked up the market. And so as technology improved, everybody realized that they were paying me to aggregate all the prices, and a lot of them were producing these prices. So they're like, well, we'll just send you an electronic file so that you don't have to listen to our recording. And so that exact model is what I've now, basically cookie cuttered across 30 or 40 different processes, whether it be gas balancing statements, royalty checks, production data, whatever. And so that's kind of it. And here we are. I started PDS 32 years ago, and the model itself has not changed. Obviously, the technology has changed a lot. And we did the sale of the accounting assets 3 years ago. But that's about it.
Wow. So I don't know when you got your degree, but I used to work with a lady who came out of Stephen F. Austin with a geology degree in 1986. And she started her own bakery in Blanco, Texas. And everyone always asked her, so why did you start a bakery with a degree in geology? And she would just say, I graduated with a degree in geology in 1986. That's what you did. You opened a bakery. So I guess you traded crude.
Well, yeah, eventually I got there, but that like I say, those were in high demand back then.
So it's taken, the PDS story has taken a lot of turns over the years. Obviously, nowadays with Google, you can go get prices pretty much anytime you want and download them anytime you want. So it's been pretty impressive. You've obviously been able to pivot with the market and, stay in the same general area, exchanging information, but, corner new parts of that all along the way. Has that been intentional or just out of necessity?
No, I'll go back to the dumb luck thing. So really, and that's one thing. I mean, Kevin, I can't tell you how much. I mean, I can list, a bunch of people that I owe a lot to, but Kevin is one of them because very early on, he got us going down the path of handling proprietary data. And so whereas posted prices, you could get them and give them to anyone. Production data, when it came to dailies, when we first started moving daily production data, most of the people I went into said, forget it. We don't give anybody our dailies. And what we found out was, yes, they did. Somebody, from the cult of Minds or somewhere, they would know a buddy at a buddy, who had a buddy, and they would exchange emails of these things back and forth. And so Chesapeake and Anadarko and a few others finally acknowledged that and said, we'd rather have one central place to where we send all of our data and we know that we've got control as to who has access to it. And so fast forward, things like check detail, all of that is extremely proprietary and private information. And so the one thing that, the reason we kind of, I use the term fly under the radar, other people will tell you I'm a horrible marketer, is that, I don't everything's proprietary data. I can't just sell it to people, and we get people approaching us all the time who want to buy information. But unless XYZ oil company tells me that I can give you their data, I'm not going to give you their data. And we've done that for 32 years. And so being able, and we're behind the proverbial firewall at, most of these companies for 20 plus years. So they know that I'm going to protect their data. And so that's kind of the slight pivot on the same model is now everything we deal with to a large degree is proprietary. Now, once you hit the data filing with state agencies, like for monthly data, most of our clients really don't care what we do with it at that point. Yep. But we've never really pursued that market, even though I think there is a market there because, obviously the big guys who sell production data, and now like John Farrell is basically giving it away. Our data is obviously a whole lot fresher than that. So.
Oh yeah. I mean, once people get their hand, at least from what Kevin tells me, and he sort of ran me through the Chesapeake site without going, behind the firewall and said, so this is actually what Barry's doing. And I had no idea, right? I had sort of viewed you as a competitor to Red Dog, which was helping provide some of that, joint interest payment data, right, and cost data to operators and partners. But as he jumped into it, it sounds like a lot more. You're doing daily production, you're doing monthly production, you're layering on field estimates, as well as accounting data. So as he started explaining it, I'm like, this is really the holy grail. And of course, the key is, yes, you can get your public data from IHS or Drilling Info or even some free data sources, as you'd mentioned. But the value is you're doing this with basically real-time information. How many people at a company like a Chesapeake or Anadarko are accessing your portal, your data on a daily basis?
Well, so production data, typically that's a raw data flow, and that will go into their production accounting system or some other reporting system. But like our well data now, Anadarko got to a point to where essentially we use the term structured and unstructured data. Anadarko is an open well shop, and that's where they keep their structured well data. But everything else is in our environment. So if you're an Anadarko, Oxy, but if you were an employee there, and when that switched, we had like 600 Anadarko employees who were using that. So if they wanted to see a log or a survey or anything on their wells, but kind of the key we've got there is that we've got all the non-op data. So like in XTO's case, who's one of our larger well data clients, we've got 26,000 of their operated wells. We're opening over 100,000 emails to their non-op inbox every month and processing those, renaming them, loading in there. And, 27,000 OBO wells. So whether it's operated or non-op, all of that information is sitting there in that PDS Well Data Exchange environment. And we load it up. Basically, it happens every day. So we're tapping, ABC's, WellView, and instead of pulling PDFs of drilling reports, we're actually pulling that data out on a live basis, syncing it into our master well data, and then loading it up, which, it's funny, the AI and BI applications that everybody is using right now, their operated data, they're able to get that near, same day and utilize that, but they're still using 90 and 120 day old data from their OBO interest when they could be having that same day. So if they're getting good returns out of those AI and BI applications, using their operated data, why not double the amount of data and get an even better return?
Sure.
So I'm looking at your website right now, and I see that, I was up on the blog here, and I see that you guys announced Sheridan Production joined Production Data Exchange or Energy Exchange on, August or whatever. So is the primary value to a Sheridan or to any of the companies that are signing up right now, is it access to the OBO data, or is it being able to shorten their, they have to send out to their partners? So is the value to them joining that to get data or to be able to streamline the distribution of data to their partners?
It's both. And people have different burning platforms. Somebody will call us with their hair on fire because they can't satisfy all the partner demands under the JOA obligations to deliver surveys or logs or production data. So we have a ready, we can turn that on in a matter of a day or two. And then the flip side to that is we accumulate all of their non-ops. So like in Kevin's case, he had, and I don't want to exaggerate, but I would guess at one point when we started, he had 10 people who were just calling their third-party operators, bugging them to get dailies so that his accrual, and, it's pretty widely known. I mean, he had the best accruals out there. And because he was on top of this, well, all of a sudden now we could come in and give him 60 to 70% of his OBO production dailies every day and in a single format. And so we used the term repurpose. He was able to repurpose a whole lot of those employees instead of collecting everything from a spreadsheet down to a cocktail napkin with non-op production data on it, to actually being analysts instead of just driving people crazy. So.
And this was a time when Chesapeake was just going gangbusters, right? A lot of different basins, probably, like you said, I don't know, 10,000 plus different non-op partners, people that are looking for data, people that you need to get data from, right? Handling a lot. From a technology standpoint, have you shifted more toward like a cloud type environment from on-premise? I mean, certainly it started with, just a paper and then maybe more to spreadsheets, but how have you evolved technology-wise?
Yeah, it all has been switched over to an Azure platform. And so, all the, and you're going to get me talking about stuff I don't even understand, but
perfect.
Yeah, it all comes in there. And the beauty there also is that, all, ABC Oil Company has to do is go set up their own Azure environment, and I sync it every night to them so they're in complete control of their data.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about confusing people. You already dropped a Lotus 123 on somebody. So
you also mentioned a 1-800 number. I don't know if people even know what that is, Tim, for our younger audience.
Well, hey, so Barry, PDS was founded in 91, according to the website. Of course, on my LinkedIn research, I saw you have a 1990 reference, but by my count, I did this just before the show. There's been about 5, maybe 6 downturns, depending upon oil versus gas, in that time frame. And I'm looking at the blog of new clients signing up. Seems like the position that PDS has now, it seems like you're a little bit insulated, if not even get more business as a result of a downturn like this, where people are shrinking the numbers and having to still exchange the same information. Comment on how PDS is in these downturns. How does it differ from, say, a traditional oil and gas company or technology vendor?
Well, I tell people that where we tend to see movement over the last 30 years is in what I term as the shoulder months, because when things are rocking and rolling, everybody's fat, dumb, and happy, and you try and save them money or saving an employee, and they just hang up on you. They don't care. They're making so much money. How can you question how I'm doing things when we're doing so well? And then when they're dead broke, nobody's there because they're all pulling the George Costanza, hiding under the desk to avoid getting laid off, and nobody ever. So now, believe it or not, and I hate to call this too early, but we're actually starting to see, just in the last few weeks, a fair amount of activity that kind of makes me believe that we're coming into that shoulder tick. I don't think it's ever going to go back to where it was. Sorry to sound like Debbie Downer, but I really think that, we've seen the highest high, if you will. but I think it'll come back and it'll be fine. And it'll probably, my ultimate hope is that it turns into a healthy industry one day. Because it sure hasn't been for 30 years. Yeah, we're starting to see movement right now, which is great. I think that's a good sign.
Well, that's
the company's been around since 1991. I'm amazed that you guys have stayed. You've been a successful company. You've been around for however many years that is, and you've stayed independent. You haven't been sucked into Enverus or IHS or name an organization. That has to be by design on your part, but it's amazing you've been able to stay independent for that long. Has that been hard to resist, joining in with someone bigger, or is that by design you're just going to stay independent?
Oh boy, that's a hard one. I mean,
just putting you on the spot.
Back in the day, I toyed around with writing business plans and going to raise money because I was so broke. And eventually I just realized that the pain and sacrifice of doing that, if I just put the effort into going and knocking on doors, at the end of the day, it kind of produced the same thing. I had no debt. I had, when things were in a downturn, I mean, like I say, no debt, no investors or anything else. And so I didn't really have any pressure there. I can tell you that a lot of the PE and VC guys don't think a lot of me just from an intelligence standpoint that I haven't done that. But
don't worry, they don't think highly of Tim and I either, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's but yeah, I mean, it's the same thing as we require no contracts. I mean, we've got contracts because all the big guys want to have them, and they're totally confused when I tell them that yes, I'll obligate myself to whatever you want me to, but if we stop performing, you can kick us to the curb tomorrow. And we've always operated that way, and it's we've never had we've had people leave because of bankruptcies and M&A activity, but nobody's ever gotten mad and left.
Yeah, that's very impressive.
That's always been, I think, we mentioned Corey Scott before, good friend of ours, came on the podcast not too long ago, a big fan of Provincetown, Massachusetts, I believe. But Corey made reference to that, right? You guys had competed for a number of years with your PDS product and their JibLink product. And he said, the thing with PDS is that once somebody gets on with them, they really don't leave. Like maybe you said you're not the greatest marketer in the world, sure, but one thing I have to give you credit for is the ability to maintain a client for 25 plus years. That's no small feat in this industry where people like myself and even Tim to a smaller extent are tasked with ripping out older technology and replacing it with the hot new stuff, which we have. Can you talk about some of the challenges, despite the ups and downs of the industry in Chapter 11s, but how have you been able to maintain a happy customer base for 25 plus years? What's the secret?
Well, another thing that these guys all think I'm a complete moron is I don't raise prices. We grow through growing the business. And we've actually had some of our bigger guys who have, I'll tell you, my funniest contract negotiation was a large bank who and this is part of the business we sold, but our competitor was selling this data at 10 cents a line and we sold it for 4 cents a line. And we, drove them nuts. And finally they called up and said, okay, we're going to give you some business, but you have to deal with our procurement department. And I was going, oh boy, here we go. Right. So we go through this entire process and the guy goes, I'm not talking commercial terms with you until we get the entire agreement hammered out. I said, fine. So we go through this whole thing and he calls me up and he goes, okay, now I have to tell you, we're not willing to pay anything more than 7 cents a line for this data. And I said, okay. That was really, and so forever they paid almost twice what every other customer did because he was such an ace negotiator. And
That's why they paid him the big bucks.
Yeah, to quote one of Jeremy and I's former bosses, Boyd Russell, he used to say, you keep or lose your customers the same way you got them. So if you got them on price, someone's going to come and beat you on price eventually. Or if you got them because of great customer service, you're going to lose them that way. Or unless you always have to keep that up, or you're going to lose them that same way that you got them. It sounds like you've kind of got that model built. You know, you're not raising prices on people at every chance you get, or obviously your service is good, because if you fail once or twice, you're going to lose that customer. So it's a testament to what you've built.
Yeah, and this is not good, bad, or otherwise as to Corey and his. I mean, I think the world of Ian, who he went to work for, and that's more who I dealt with. But even before Ian even moved down to the States, they looked at that market, and this is the way a lot of companies and similar spaces to ours look at it. Is they were going, okay, the average company, by the time is all in, they're spending $10 per jib processing that. And so they came out and said, well, we're going to charge $5. And I looked at that and said, my cost is only about 20 cents. I'll charge 50 cents. And they were like, well, you're an idiot. I mean, people are paying 10. They should sign up for 5 all day. Well, I can tell you, and Ian can probably back me up on this, they spent years with, I would run into Dave Howden, and it was like he was running his forehead into a wall because it wouldn't move. And then finally they did. And so I think at the end of the day, he probably came out better with his model than my model. But boy, it was a long runway for them doing that. And now with the price points that they've got, it's not going to be too long before, like you say, somebody comes in and tries to compete with them. Whereas at our price points, it's not going to generate a big appetite to where somebody's going to come drop a bunch of development costs to try and compete with what we do.
Yeah. So on the data side, do you do visualizations, or do you leave the kind of, the beautification, the BI, the reporting to the end user, and they slap your data, on a Power BI or Spotfire? How does that work? Or do you kind of create those visualizations for your clients?
So like with the well data, we host, we've got the platform that holds all these PDFs, like save logs, surveys, plats, permits, all that kind of stuff. But in terms of the analytics, I've never been able to move fast enough, nor been able to get my wallet out of my pocket in a big enough way to go chase those. And the rate of change, by the time Barry went and developed some really neat product, it'd be 2 generations old. And so we provide that underlying data and let all those guys who have that cool, sexy software fight it out. And it just we feed the data. So our stuff is in most cases just raw data. It's, we let WellView and Open Wells and Wellies just hammer it out in the trenches with their high dollar stuff, but we're moving the underlying data around.
Really powerful.
Feed it all.
That's great.
So you located the company in Austin, which I'm envious of. I'd love to have started something in Austin. And now, and Jeremy said it real fast going by, and now you've summered in Nantucket. We've already had Susan Cladd on here, who had to go to Santa Barbara to go to work every once in a while. Brutal. Sounds like you've got the best of both worlds here, Austin and Nantucket.
Well, I'm very blessed. I mean, I don't think it's any big secret that we did that sale 3 years ago. Sure. And one of the things that my wife and I have always loved coming up here, and we've got 4 kids in their 20s, and now it's a good family spot. And like I say, I feel very fortunate to do it. It's silliness, and who knows how long that'll go before all of a sudden grandkids and everything else change the world. But it's fun.
Yeah, they don't let me on Nantucket. They stick me on Martha's Vineyard with the rest of the poor people. I'm just kidding. Certainly not.
You ever heard any good poems up there?
Man, the question that I wanted to ask, and Tim, I had to do this. Do you ever see Bill Belichick? He summers on Nantucket.
Yeah, I think I'm thinking he's probably playing golf at a different place than the Muni I play up here.
Perhaps.
And I have a question. You mentioned Martha's Vineyard, Jeremy, and Nantucket. In my head, from Houston, Texas, and having been to Martha's Vineyard once, to me, they're the same place. Is there a fundamental difference between Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard? I mean, is there a different culture between them?
Are you asking me, or are you asking Barry, who has a house there?
Well, either one of you can answer it.
It is night and day.
Really?
For two little specks in the North Atlantic that are 11 miles apart at their closest point, they are night and day.
Yep. They really are.
Worth between them.
There's a rivalry, not only like the Thanksgiving Day football game rivalry where they take a ferry to play each other, switch islands each year. Pretty cool, right? Probably super cold. But it is. Martha's Vineyard is much more commercial. I think that in general, there's more people, there's more businesses. Nantucket is probably a little bit more quiet, right? Maybe a little more expensive. And I think people are bothered a little bit less there. But like I said, I've been to the vineyard. I haven't been to Nantucket, but maybe Barry will invite me someday. Hint, hint. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
We run camp all summer long. So
nice.
It's funny though, because, everybody's perception is that you've got this snooty group of people up here. Well, both islands will tell you that there is no dumpster fire like the knockdown fights that go on at the Nantucket Martha's Vineyard high school football games.
All right.
I bet. Now I remember some beautiful days like on the vineyard, at least. I think I must've been about 20, a long time ago. And riding my bike, you can basically ride your bike and see the entire island in a day. And Nantucket is no different, but those were some great memories. And certainly it gets really cold in the winter. Do you ever spend time up there in the winter? Or do you kind of shut it down October and then go back in May?
No, we come and go quite a bit. It's, our kids like to come up here for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and it's fun because it's just dead. And we've actually got pictures from January of 2018 to where they're walking out in the harbor where it's frozen solid.
Wow.
Wow.
So yeah, like I say, it's just something new. It's fun for us. So.
Well, congratulations. And I mean that, and not just for the fact that you earned that place in Nantucket, but for the value that you've provided to this industry. To go back in my career, it was a lot of visualization, sort of what Tim's company OVS does today, pulling data sets together, creating those visuals, but those visuals are worthless without great data, right? So people like myself and Tim have a strong appreciation for people who can aggregate that data, put it in a format that then we can create those pretty pictures and all that sexy software. So kudos to you for that. Congrats on the place in Nantucket. And Tim's got something for you before we go. Yeah,
and I just wanted to kind of echo what Jeremy was saying, but to me, it's the stick-to-itiveness. I know that's not a real word, but I've heard it before of, hey, I've got this idea. I'm going to run it down. I'm going to make it work. And I'm going to keep making new things work along the way and find a model that it just works. And you've done it to a point where you've got a fence around it so that it's hard for anyone to come in and take it out. It's a great company that you've built, a testament to your vision and the lack of vision of all those PE guys that don't like you.
Well, you're very kind. Yeah, Tim, I want to talk to you about this, what Jeremy refers to as your worthless software without my data in it.
Well, in my research this week, I was thinking, man, I should be figuring out how to get on this well data exchange somehow with my clients. So I will be talking to you about it.
Well, I hope we would always welcome the opportunity. It's, it's funny. Like I say, I'm not a very good marketer, but once somebody sees it, they typically get it, and we can usually bring some value. But no, always love a good opportunity.
Barry, you may not be the best marketer, but I'm going to throw this out there as a word of caution for anybody who wants to compete with PDS. Just remember, you come at the king, you best not miss.